The Dungeon Delve podcast would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which it was created, and pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging.
Hello, my name is Sven from Crit and Miss.
This is Christian from Hermes D&D Services.
And this
is the Dungeon Delve podcast. Welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing two different settings in Dungeons and Dragons. One, the original Greyhawk, made by Gary Gygax, the man, the master himself, and Dave Arneston. And Dragonlance, the second most popular setting just underneath Forgotten Realms, which we spoke about last episode, made by Laura and Tracy Hickman and Margaret Wise. But first, we're going to go through Greyhawk. Now, you're just telling me this is one of your favorite kind of sessions just underneath Avernus and whatnot. Is that correct?
Yeah, Greyhawk is pretty popular, being one of those original sort of campaign settings, you know, written by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneston themselves, sort of like the founding fathers of D&D, as it were.
Yeah, if you don't know too much about them, Ernest Gary Gygax, his full name is was an American game designer, passed away in 2008, but he was one of the co-creators with Dave Arneston in the creation of Dungeons and Dragons. Back in 1971, he made the game himself. He is the original dungeon master, and David Lance Arneston, also American game designer, worked with him in the creation of this. They made Greyhawk itself, and its creation, I was doing some research for it last night and today, and it kind of feels like, I don't know, like how a bunch of friends would make something and then realize it's becoming out of their control. It's kind of similar to, I guess, how like Matt Mercer has said that he's felt in interviews with his world and Critical Role, where it started off as something just for him and his friends and eventually became kind of so big that everyone is now expanding on it. So, if you don't know about Greyhawk...
It's the Frankenstein of games, as it were. It's alive! It's alive! Oh shit, it's alive! Run!
Exactly, it just became too big for them to handle. And you can even see that in things like Greyhawk's world creation, which we'll get into in a second. But with the world of Greyhawk, it originally started as a dungeon under a castle. That was it. It was a dungeon under a castle made by Gary Gygax for the amusement of his children and his friends. To have some fun in the house, which is what D&D should always be for, just for the fun. But it rapidly expanded into a multi-layered dungeon with different environments. Eventually there was a city called Greyhawk nearby the dungeon. Eventually near the city there was an entire world, and it just kept expanding from there with different continents on the world. It's funny just how kind of out of hand it went. To go over this quickly, so the creation myth for Greyhawk, there wasn't originally a creation myth. Gary Gygax and Dave Arneston, when they were kind of going over it, so he'd left it very open-ended, even more so than the Forgotten Realms, where things came from. Gods in this land had minimal interactions other than being like deities for clerics or patrons for warlocks, but they had very low character interaction. And so due to that, he just didn't talk about them much. He didn't give much information and left it very open-ended and didn't really explore it much. What happened was players actually took this into their own hands and started developing the world of Greyhawk for them. They started saying that some of the Greek gods or Norse gods made it. Conan's Chrome in Times of Need was the person who made it. And eventually there was enough of an uproar that Gygax needed to fill the void with something.
Step in with some official content?
Yeah, exactly. So he didn't say how the world itself was created. He still kept that left open-handed, but he did make two gods of Greyhawk, and they almost feel like joke gods, funnily enough. So there was Saint Cuthbert, who brought non-believers around to the wax of his wit and cudgel, and Faltus, who had people phonetically believing that he was the only god in existence and all other gods didn't exist. So yeah, you had Saint Cuthbert, which is kind of Saint Cuthbert feels like what's the god of cheese in Elder Scrolls that has the Wobberjack?
No, unfortunately, I never dived that deeply into the Elder Scrolls.
Let me find it. Sheogorath. So Sheogorath is a god of chaos in the Elder Scrolls, and his main thing is that he loves cheese, and he gives people a staff that can summon cheese. This is in-game. So,
I'm not going to lie, I kind of feel like I need that staff in my real life. I eat so much cheese. You wouldn't believe how much cheese I eat.
You'd be the center of the wine party with that stuff. And then Foltus was the complete opposite, where Foltus felt like he was almost bringing in like Mormons to Dungeons and Dragons. But those were the two gods that he made. They were both good gods, and so there was then more uproar where there's only good gods, so he then had to make evil gods and villainous gods, and it slowly kept expanding from there. But there's not really a creation myth for it. Greyhawk, however, eventually started having novels crafted, and the novels eventually turned into campaign settings. So there's some very unknown ones, and you actually see a lot of these. I brought it up last session, but when Dungeons and Dragons has crossed over with Magic the Gathering, a lot of the lands in the Dungeons and Dragons set that got released, some of them have special lands, and they're actually based around the art that is the art used in these original sessions. So you see ones like Hall of the Fire Giants, Shrine of the Kuatoa, Vault of the Drow. It's not these exact pictures, but there's, I can't remember the name of them, but there are particular lands that are special lands. And the art for it, rather than being the usual art for in like a mountain or a forest or a swamp, is actually the art covers of these books. And I feel like that was a really nice touch. But some of them, like I just mentioned, those three there, I don't know if any of you had heard of them, but I'd never heard of them before in my life. Other ones, however, are very popular. There's Tomb of Horrors, for example, which was known for being made by Gygax, not as a campaign for people to actually complete. I've actually studied it a little bit in the past, and the Tomb of Horrors was because so many players at high levels in Dungeons and Dragons basically just felt like gods, and they felt like they could do anything. And apparently Gygax didn't like that, and so he made this campaign as a punishment, as a way to show you, even if you're a level 20 wizard and you have infinite spells, or a level 20 Rune Circle druid, I can still mess you up. And so he made this for them, and it's now almost become like a trial or a challenge. Like speedrunners will try to speedrun certain games, Jump King and things like that. This is the Jump King of Dungeons and Dragons.
Honestly, it sounds horrible. It sounds like it lives up to its name. I've done a little bit of research into the Tomb of Horrors myself, and it's safe to say you're not going to see that streamed on Crit and Miss anytime soon. But there is one in this list that you will be seeing.
You getting any clues or not yet?
Hey, let's throw a spoiler in there right now. White Plume Mountain is coming to Crit and Miss sometime in the near future.
Lovely.
Which was, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure White Plume Mountain was rated the number 2 overall adventure in Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, I wouldn't be too sure, sorry. I know a lot of information and lore about different campaigns that have come out to kind of grab from it myself, but funnily enough, I have never run a pre-made story in my life.
Look at that. All original, ladies and gentlemen. This guy.
I don't like being restrained. The world is must be chaos.
Look, you're not as lazy as I am.
No, but that wouldn't surprise me. I do know, however, you were mentioning it when we were discussing before this episode, but there's also, is Greyhawk the setting for the Yawning Portal? Is that what you were saying?
So the Yawning Portal is sort of like a collection of very popular D&D adventure modules, and I think it's 7 adventures, and 4 of them are Greyhawk adventures. So there's the White Plume Mountain, Tomb of Horrors, I believe it's Shrine of the Kuatoa, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I'd have to look it up again, but 4 of them are definitely from Greyhawk. So there's a lot of like really, what's the right word? Iconic adventures, which are actually set in Greyhawk or were originally set in Greyhawk and then sort of molded into Forgotten Realms and other sort of settings.
Okay, lovely. So, aside from the creation, because there's not too much about it, to fill up the rest of the time, so we're hitting that nice quota for the podcast here, what I wanted to discuss was actually some major characters in the settings.
Ooh, I know my favourite one.
Who's your favourite one first, before we get into it?
Mordenkainen.
Mordenkainen is an amazing character. One of the most, probably the most famous character purely because of his source book and the information given about him there. I don't know anyone that doesn't know Mordenkainen. But he's exactly one of these people. So for those of you that don't know, Gygax, in his world, in his campaign, he had obviously his place, his friends, his family, people that played in the stories in the campaign, and it wasn't a great enough of a thing in your life to have played with him as one of his family members, playing with the original creator of Dungeons and Dragons. You also then got the boon of becoming ever etched like the Hollywood Clark into Dungeons and Dragons itself. Basically, his friends, his family, kids, people that would play with him in his games, some of his main players eventually started becoming creators in the lore of spells and cities and campaign settings. An example of this is the spell Melf's Acid Arrow. Melf was actually a character that played in his games with him and was created by his son Luke. And so he brought this into actual lore, based a spell around him, and I can't think of a nicer thing. When I have kids in my published story, I'm going to name something after him, but I feel like that's a nice thing to kind of etch it into immortality.
I feel like you need to name one of the spells in your campaign after me. Sven's ridiculous magic missile, something like that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll make sure I mark that down. We'll keep it as a deal.
Please do.
I'll name one of the spells after you. But to go over them, you had characters Merlin, Robilar, Tensor, which a lot of you should hopefully know from Tensor's Floating Discs, another spell in Dungeons and Dragons. Terek, Eric's cousin, which was the character's name. Urag, Mordenkainen, who is one of the most famous characters Gygax made. And apparently here, this might even be why you like him so much. Apparently he came from Finnish mythology. And I know you like a lot of the kind of northeastern European mythology from what I've kind of learned to know about you, like Slavic and everything like that. There was also Bigby, which a lot of you should know from Bigby's Hand, a spell that is always cast with the first season of Critical Role by the lovely bard. Melf's Acid Arrow, a character Rary, Otto. Where do I know Otto from? Otto. I've heard. There, that's it. Otto's Irresistible Dance, which is another enchantment spell, which is basically like a hypnotic. You cast it on someone. I'll grab up the details of the spell right now. Let me do some Google.
I feel like I, in real life, am proficient at that particular spell. If you've ever seen me dance, it can only be described as irresistible.
That's also right. There is a character that might have been grabbed from this. In Waterdeep, the Forgotten Realms setting, there is a fairy dragon called Otto. Let's see. Otto's Irresistible Dance.
Otto. Very German name, that.
So it's a 3.5 spell. Oh, it actually moved to 5th edition as well. Here we go. So a 6th level spell, so it's super high. Its casting time is 1 action, 30 feet, 1 minute duration. Enchantment spell, wisdom save. Choose one creature within range. The target begins a comic dance in place, shuffling, tapping feet, or capering for the duration. I would love to make someone do a shuffle, but like modern day shuffle. Creatures can't be charmed, creatures that can't be charmed are immune to the spell. A dancing creature must use all its movement to dance without leaving its space and has disadvantage on dexterity saving throws and attack rolls. While the target is affected by this spell, other creatures have advantage attacking them, and as an action, a dancing creature can make a wisdom save to regain control of itself. On a successful save, the spell ends.
I feel like I want to cast that spell on myself. I want to cast that spell on myself and go out into town.
But another person with the spell is kind of named after them. The last two that I see here on my research list, there's Drawmidge and the Circle of Eight, apparently. But a lot of these famous people and famous characters kind of named after them, which it feels really nice. But with Greyhawk and this entire setting, there's not a whole lot of information. A lot of the campaigns, obviously, some of the main ones are still used nowadays. But unfortunately, I say unfortunately, it's not unfortunately, but a lot of modern sessions and campaigns are all just made in Forgotten Realms. It's like an overarching superpower of Dungeons and Dragons now, which is great, obviously. It makes everything centralized, which I find is nicer and easier. But as someone that enjoys a lot of these other areas being, when you do try to explore them, it's like when learning about different mythologies. When I learn about Norse mythology or Mediterranean mythology or Aztec mythology or Roman mythology and all these different areas, I like learning about all these different things. And unfortunately, Greyhawk just hasn't been expanded on that much in modern culture. I don't know. Maybe that's something you could do in your session, Sven. Eventually, after running your ice one, you could make a Greyhawk setting.
Well, yeah, we'll see how we go. It could be that because I'm actually not going to be the DM for that particular campaign. I'm going to have a friend of mine DM that one. I'm going to be hosting it, of course, but he's going to be DMing it, and he is quite fond of adventures set in the Greyhawk setting. So hey, it could be an ongoing thing. We'll see how it goes.
So what you're trying to say is that you've got many, many hours for when you'll be in the backgrounds doing everything to come up with ideas.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I get to sit here and I get front row seats and I get to learn all about the Greyhawk setting while doing none of the work myself.
Lovely.
Which is exactly the way I like doing things. I like getting other people to do the work. Don't know about you, Christian. That's why being a DM is so good. You just give the players ideas and they just they run with it and they go, oh, I do this, and you're like, oh yes, that's exactly the way that thing is.
Exactly. Someone's like, oh my god, you planned for this, and you just nod and smile. Yes, I did, even though you had no clue. But hopefully look forward to that. See if it happens. But that's basically the world of Greyhawk. Obviously, we still can explore into it. We'll be doing the votes for all of the different worlds that we eventually go over. There should be 5 in total we were discussing. But once we've gone through all 5, Greyhawk, we definitely can go into the adventures themselves. These individuals and characters like Mordecai and these amazing people, and to do episodes about them. If you're wanting to vote as Greyhawk is the one that you're wanting. But that's enough about that. Next up, with our second one, we have the setting of Dragonlance. Now, Dragonlance, from what I've found here, is the second most popular setting just underneath Forgotten Realms. Unfortunately, because of how, like I said, how overpowering Forgotten Realms is, it's still often in modern culture not really expanded on and sometimes forgotten about. But it's important for several different reasons, which we'll go over. So, Dragonlance is a shared universe that was made and created by the Hickmans, Laura and Tracy, and expanded further on by Tracy Hickman and Margaret Wise. So they... Basically, what happened was the Hickmans, both of them, came up with the idea in a car drive. They were driving to their interview with TSR Incorporated, the main company with Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons. As both of them were driving, Tracy Hickman apparently met his future writing partner, Margaret Wise, at the interviews, and they expanded on it together. So they got the job with TSR. I'm guessing, I don't, it doesn't say with any of the research I found, but I'm guessing if they started writing this, they got the job. But they started expanding on it, writing books and games, and just like the Baldur's Gate games and video games, Dragonlance had its own ones as well. Apparently there were 8 video games that were created set in the Dragonlance world. The main popular one being War of the Lance. But the D&D games that were made and settings aren't often used nowadays. There is Dragonlance 5th edition, which was published in 1996, and Heroes of the Lance, which is made popular as well. A lot of different areas like here. But from the campaigns that I tried to find, the main ones that I did were 2 settings of Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen, and Dragonlance, Warriors of Krynn. Krynn being the sort of main world that a lot of this is set on, similar to Toril being the case for Forgotten Realms. However, with both of those, I have very minimal knowledge about either of those settings, as this was my first time hearing about either of them. And I couldn't find much more on other settings. I do know that Dragonlance, its creation myth as well is very sort of, not bland, I would say, but unknown is the best sort of way to put it. The sort of way that the entire world was created is very left in blank as well.
It's open-ended, as it were?
Yes. There is, however, the world of Krynn. So just like that story in the campaign mentioned, Krynn is the main setting, and the main capital or continent on it, Ansalon. So Ansalon is the main area where you've got several races of elves, dwarves, gnomes, minotaurs, apparently being one of the main races, humans, and then a race that I hadn't heard before, Kender. I love the concept of the Kender.
Please tell me more.
Kender are wizened 14-year-olds. That is how they're explained.
I feel like those two things should actually just cancel each other out. I don't think there's no such thing. This is ridiculous. I mean, I know this is a fantasy setting, but this is just going too far for me.
Apparently that's what they look like. So they do age normally, and they take the forms similar to halflings. But rather than halflings and hobbits of being a bit more stout and small and thin or having different shapes, they kind of just look like teenagers with slightly pointed ears. And in the setting itself, they are a sort of nomadic traveling people, and they're often then the races that, because of their slenderness and their sort of curiousness and being literally like teenagers,
I can see where this is going.
they're often played as the rogues and the people that are getting into trouble, bards, things of that nature. Yep. They're the classes that are played as that. But I thought it was such an odd concept for a race. Like, obviously, you have a lot of these other ones like minotaurs and lizard folk and all these half races, things from like Tolkien's of hobbits, like obviously being taken from gnomes and halflings and things of that nature. I had never seen a race that's just like, you know what, we're going to grab an age bracket and slap a race on it. So it's very interesting, definitely that. But in Krynn, this world is the main setting, the main area where a lot of these areas, sort of races are on. The history of Krynn apparently is set into 5 separate ages. It's not as detailed as the Forgotten Realms, but they do try to put some information in it. So there's the first age, which is the time of creation. This is when the deities were kind of born and shaped and created, and Krynn itself was also formed. So it's unlike the Forgotten Realms where Ao was the first thing made, it looks like all the gods were kind of birthed at the exact same time. After everything was birthed was the Age of Dreams. This was when rapid growth happened on Krynn, and a lot of these civilizations started to kind of become actual nations and empires and kingdoms and grow into what they would be now. This era was also marked by 3 great wars between all of these races and dragonkind. One thing actually that I forgot to mention, so obviously as Dragonlance, the name insinuates and suggests, the Hickman's main qualm with Dungeons & Dragons was that it had too many dungeons and not enough dragons. and they thought that was the main problem, and they set out to solve that. They needed more winged beasts and more dragons. We demand more dragons in this setting, and so they just decided to go ahead and do it. So
I don't know. I'm a big fan of a dungeon myself. Let's not get into that. That's a different podcast. We'll talk about that another time.
Following the Second Age was the Third Dragon War in the Age of Might. So this huge event basically destroyed a lot of the world. The main empire that was made by these races in the first civilization, called Istar, was sundered from the entire world itself, and a lot of the races were nearly disappeared from Krynn. After this, the entire world went into sort of like a dark age, like what we experienced back in medieval times, where for 300 years, back in the 70s, for 300 years, a depression followed, and this entire time after the Age of Might was known as the Age of Despair. So this was the fourth one. So for 300 years after this huge war, there was just darkness and death, and it's not too expanded on. During this period was when the War of the Lance happened, during this Dark Age. That's when the games and a lot of the settings sort of set during this Dark Age. And when Dragonlance was first introduced in Dungeons & Dragons, events such as Lost Wars happened in the Age of Despair. The Fifth Age after all of this was then the Age of Mortals, which is where a lot of novels and game supplements took their form in this Fifth Age. So I think similar to how you said 4th edition was set during that spell plague, it looks like some of the earlier editions, because I know that Dragonlance was very popular in 3rd edition, 3.5 from memory. A lot of that, I'm guessing, probably took place in this Age of Despair, and then 5th edition seems to be kind of set in this Age of Mortals. But obviously, if we do end up going over Dragonlance, and when we do an episode delve deeping into these things, we can probably go through these ages and expand on it further. That being said, with Dragonlance, one thing that is very detailed on are the dragons, which is obviously great and handy for us. And that's where we get into a source book that came out very recently, Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. So even though Dragonlance, its stories aren't as popular nowadays, its monsters definitely are. You've got all I'm not sure which dragons were made in Forgotten Realms or other areas of the chromatic dragons and the metallic dragons and whatnot, but I definitely know that they are especially expanded on in Fizban's Treasure of Dragons and the Dragonlance stories. So if you haven't got the source book itself, definitely grab it. It's an amazing piece of resource for you to use.
Good way to kill your players too.
Definitely. I played with you, and I know that that's something that you enjoy. Not killing everyone, but you just want to pick off one person.
Yeah, I just want to get that one dramatic death.
Exactly, draw on the heartstrings. But Fizban, the writer of this book, similar to how you got like Mordekainen writing one of the earlier books and Mordekainen writing one of the earlier books, writing quote unquote, Fizban is a dragon himself. He's often apparently associated with sort of like a Gandalf look, where he will change shape to look like an elderly wizard that's wise, but a bit kind of jokesy and doesn't really give anyone the truth of the way speaking in riddles. And he is a great worm, is what they referenced in the book. So great worms is a new sort of maturity of dragon that's above ancient dragons. A great worm is a dragon that has started to almost reach godhood, just underneath people like Bahamut and Tiamat and Sven. And they basically started to realize the multiverse. So just like we've got all these different worlds of Toril and Faerun and Greyhawk and Dragonlance with Krynn and all these different worlds that you can travel to with Spelljammers. Spelljammers, by the way, it's just to kind of classify here, these worlds aren't really in like one universe. They're in separate universes, and the ships can travel between the universes in some aspects. Sometimes it's just in like a real life solar system. But don't get the wrong idea. This isn't a solar system with different worlds. These are different universes, similar to like if you watch like Loki with all the different universes that he travels through and all the different in the multiverse.
I believe each different setting is contained within its own crystal sphere. I believe that's what they call it.
Oh, really? Okay, I hadn't delved into that, but in that sort of a sense, what Fizban is and what Grey Worms do is they know about these crystal spheres. They know about all these different multiverses. And some of these great worms will eventually try to form plots and plans with counterparts of themselves. Other ones will try to steal the essence of other versions of themselves to become even more powerful, like some black worms will try to do that.
Just like Jet Li.
Exactly. And Fizban is a god himself, even though he's a great worm. Because he is the version of Bahamut in Forgotten Realms. They've made it canon, they've set it in stone. He is Bahamut in the Dragonlance universe. This is a different version of Bahamut in this different land itself. And I thought that was a nice kind of way to meld together two amazing texts where they're still separate. You can still have your different universes and whatnot. But I do like mixing them over and cross-matching. One of my favorite things in comic book history was when they did the meld of like DC versus Marvel, or when they even mixed the characters together and you had characters like, what was it?
Marvel vs. Capcom.
No, when they Marvel and DC characters.
Or Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
No. What I'm thinking about, this is it. When they had things like Dark Claw, which was a combination of Batman and Wolverine merged into one character.
Oh, right.
Or characters like Super Soldier, which was Captain America and Superman. Dr. Doomsday, which was Doctor Doom, so from Fantastic Four, and Doomsday mixed together in one character. Doctor Strange Fate, which was Dr. Fate and Charles Xavier mixed together. It all sounds very silly and funny, but I do like the concept of them doing similar things like this with Dungeons and Dragons, even if it's different universes and versions. I like the idea that you could make your own world as a dungeon master, and it could know about Kryn, and it could know about Toril, and different versions of itself. So you could make your own Bahamut, but in your eyes and how you envision Bahamut to be.
Well, that's what Dungeons & Dragons is all about. It's not just being told what to do. You get to do whatever you want to do. So your Bahamut could exist alongside all the other versions of Bahamut that everyone else runs in their games.
Exactly. It really expands on it nicely. And it's not spoken about enough. To be honest, before researching these for the episodes for Dungeon Delve, I didn't know jack squat about Dragonlance or Greyhawk, and the further I kind of read into them, I still want to follow Forgotten Realms because it's got so many amazing characters, but I do like the idea of possibly like ripping space-time tears and bringing characters through or stuff like that, because it does sound interesting sort of melding these worlds together. Maybe I can bring in some Kenders into my published story and have some teenagers that get cracking wise.
Here's a fun fact. In Baldur's Gate 2, back in 2001, there is actually a little bit of a cameo from some Dragonlance characters. There is a particular mission in which you enter a plane-hopping sphere, and there's some knights of, I can't remember exactly. They never really mention it. It's just in their name that suggests they're from the Dragonlance series, but there was already way back then that sort of crossover between different settings. And what's fun is when you learn about these settings, if you were to play a Spelljammer campaign, you now have these other worlds that your players can visit. If that makes sense, they can go to the Dragonlance setting, they can go to the Greyhawk setting, and they can visit these other worlds, and they're already fully fleshed out for you as a dungeon master.
Yeah, you can have some amazing sort of, even just like one-shots as they travel around to each world. Like, you don't need to travel there on a ship and spend a whole campaign there. They could travel to Greyhawk and they could meet Mordekainen. They could travel to Forgotten Realms and they could battle with Asmodeus. They could travel to Dragonlance and they could meet an old wizard that they don't realize at the time, and then they find out later was actually Fizzban. So you can have all these cool interactions with like these quote-unquote D&D celebrities.
It'd be like Sliders of the Dungeons and Dragons universe. You remember that show, Sliders?
Yeah, I do. That's a callback. But it's an amazing setting. Now, with Dragonlance, there was one thing I wanted to go over. Where was it?
There's also lancers. There's dragons, but there's also lancers.
That's right. There is also lancers. No. So with Dragonlance, with its creation, Hickman had actually served. Funny enough, I made the joke previously with Greyhawk, but Hickman had served as a Mormon. He served as a Mormon missionary in Java for 2 years, apparently, in Indonesia. And while he was there, the reason that I mention this is apparently quite a lot of the spells in the Dragonlance universe, I'm not sure if there's any sort of spells in D&D, I haven't looked into too much of these ones, but they're actually written in Indonesian.
Oh, well, there you go. I had no idea about that.
I thought it was really cool. See if I can find some Dragonlance spells.
Dragonlance spells.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so spells of Kryn. So you've got Arcane Eye, Arcane Staff, Awaken the Mind, but then you've also got things like Breath of Hidekel and a spell called Chitin Skin. I'm guessing this is some of those ones. You've got Dalamar's Lightning Lance.
That does sound right.
Let's see if there's any other ones that sound... Eye of Uchino. Hideous Laughter came from here, apparently. Illusory Trap also came from here as well. Grasping Hand. Let's see. So many spells that I've never seen before. Oh, Telepathic Bond, which is a very used... that was actually used in the Calamity series ran by Brennan Lee Mulligan with Critical Role not too long ago. Abria Iron Guard had Telepathic Bond the entire time. It's a very overpowered spell. Transfer Essence, I've used that before on a character myself. But no, some very interesting spells, and some of them, I can see like the Indonesian flair. But I actually really like that myself. I'd never kind of considered doing that. What would be your language if you were to involve a language into creations of your things?
Oh, it would be Dutch. If I'm gonna bring a language into spells, and you'll find that a lot of Dutch words are already used in the English language. So it wouldn't be too difficult. There might be some people who struggle to pronounce them, as you were struggling with the pronunciations of some of those spells. But yeah, I could see the Rotop spell, which is where you tell someone to go away and they do.
What is cheese in Dutch?
Kaas.
Okay, you can become the Wobberjack as you just cast Dutch everywhere. But I guess for myself, see, I'm half English, boring, and then half German. I'm not sure how that would go down. So I feel like I'm just like, if a German spell, I don't feel like would go well, just because it would just sound like someone shouting at you, no matter what the spell's name is. But I think for my own favorites in history, I would probably make some Latin spells. I've always loved the ancient way that Latin sounds. Yeah, that's Dragonlance basically. Not too much to kind of go over with the creation and stuff like that. We've gone over as much as possible, but obviously if this is the one that we decide to vote on, we can go over the races of stuff like the Kender, and why Minotaurs are so popular on Kryn. We can go over the world. We can go over Fizzban and the dragons and a bit more in-depth with that. Yes, I do even see, with the Dragonlance adventures, I can't remember the name, there seems to be a lich and a knight here. I think these were Knights of the Purple Dragon, something like that.
That's the one. That was them.
That's what you're thinking of?
Yes.
Yes, because I remember these two guys fight, and it's a really big fight in history, and I don't know where I remember learning from it, but it definitely was a big thing. So it wouldn't surprise me if maybe that was from the game. That's why it was such a well-known pop culture thing. But that is these two areas, and I think that's what we've got for today.
I'm excited to learn more about these. So hopefully people vote about these. I know a lot about the Forgotten Realms already. I want to know more about Dragonlance, and I want to know more about Greyhawk. But there's also, novels you can read and all that kind of stuff. So
100%. Yeah, there's novels out there you can still grab, and I'm not sure if they're online. You can definitely have a look. If you find them online, share the link with us in the comments here, and we can possibly check it out and
I've read one.
An episode on them. Oh, you have?
I have, yeah. It was quite a while ago, so I can't quite remember the details, but I have read one of the Dragonlance series books, yes.
Lovely, interesting. Well, either way, we'll catch you guys for the next episode, and I think for the next episode we're going to be going over another two. Obviously, a lot of these areas other than Forgotten Realms just aren't as fleshed out, unfortunately. But we're going to be going over Ravnica and Eberron, so getting a bit of in-depth in more in Magic the Gathering, and then a little bit more in-depth in the ways of technology.
Steampunk.
Yeah. So definitely catch next episode. I guess we'll see you guys then.
Can't wait. Have a good night, guys. Don't forget to check out Homie's D&D services on Facebook and Crit and Miss on Twitch. Have a good night, and we'll see you for the next episode.
See you.
Bye, everyone.